Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it. Then let's evaluate together. The penthouse office of Wilson Technologies towered 70 floors above Manhattan. A sleek fortress of glass and steel that screamed untouchable wealth. Neon lights, red and gold, bled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, carving sharp streaks across the polished black marble floor. The city's pulse thrummed below, a low bass line that never quit, drowned out only by the faint clink of ice in Ryan Wilson's whiskey glass. At 38, he was a walking paradox. A tech billionaire who'd built a $12 billion empire, wrapped in a tailored black suit that radiated control, but with eyes that betrayed a man on the edge. His dark hair was mussed, his jaw tight like he was grinding his own failures to dust. Across the room, Amara Johnson stood with her arms crossed, her scuffed sneakers squeaking on the marble. At 32, she was pure defiance. A black woman from Harlem, her tight curls spilling loose from a half-hearted bun, her faded Harlem corner store uniform clinging to her frame after a brutal night shift ringing up groceries for late-night stragglers. Her deep brown eyes didn't waver, even as Ryan's gaze sliced through her like a blade. She'd been hauled up here at 3A. No warning, just a curt Mr. Wilson needs you. Now, her gut churned. Not from fear, but from the bone-deep certainty that men like him didn't see women like her unless they wanted something, and that something was always trouble. You're late, Ryan said, his voice low, smooth, like the growl of a machine you'd never touch. Amara arched an eyebrow, shifting her weight to one hip. I was scanning beer for your city's drunks. Didn't know I was on your damn payroll. His lips twitched, a flicker of something, annoyance, maybe respect, before he set the glass down. Ice rattling like a warning. He leaned forward, palms flat on his obsidian desk, his 6'2" frame casting a shadow that ate the light. You're here because I've got a problem, he said. And you're gonna fix it, she snorted, uncrossing her arms. Me? Fix your billionaire bullshit? You're out of your damn mind. Call it what you want. He straightened, eyes narrowing, like a predator sizing up prey. You know who I am? Everybody does, she said, voice flat. Ryan Wilson, tech god, king of Manhattan. What's that got to do with me? Everything. He slid a manila folder across the desk, the paper hissing against the wood. Open it. Amara hesitated, her pulse spiking. She stepped forward, sneakers scuffing, and flipped open the folder. Inside was a contract, pages thick with legal jargon, but the bolded title hit like a punch. Marriage agreement. Her heart stuttered, fingers tightening on the paper. She looked up, eyes blazing. You're fucking insane. Read it, he said, unfazed, like he was ordering coffee. She scanned the first page, breath-catching. The deal was brutal. Marry Ryan Wilson for 6 months, play the perfect wife in public, live in his penthouse, and keep her mouth shut. In return, a 7-figure payout, enough to cover her mom's hospital bills, get her brother Darius out of debt, and maybe let Amara dream again. But the fine print was a cage. No personal relationships, no leaving without approval, no screwing up his image. She'd be his fix, his way to keep his CEO seat under a secret board clause, demanding a stable family image after his divorce left him looking like a liability. She slammed the folder shut, shoving it back. Screw this, I'm not your prop. Ryan didn't flinch. He stepped around the desk, closing the distance, his polished loafers silent on the marble. He stopped close enough for her to catch his cologne. Sandalwood, sharp, like money and danger. You're not a prop, he said, voice low, but you're not dumb. Your mom's drowning in medical debt. Your brother's one bad day from losing everything. You really gonna walk away? Amara's breath hitched, anger flaring like a spark. You don't know shit about my family. I know enough. His eyes locked on hers, unyielding. But there was a glint. Calculation. Maybe something else. Sign it, Johnson. You get your life back. I get mine. She wanted to slap him, to storm out and let his empire burn. But the image of her mom's oxygen mask, Darius's voice cracking when he said he'd handle it, anchored her. She clenched her fists, nails digging into her palms. If I do this, I'm not your toy. You don't own me. Deal, he said, too quick, like he'd known she'd bend. He handed her a pen, its metal cold against her fingers. Sign. Her hand shook as she scrawled her name, each stroke a betrayal. When she looked up, Ryan was watching her, face unreadable. Good, he said. Now we start. Start what? she snapped, tossing the pen onto the desk. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced at the door, where his father, Charles Wilson, a silver-haired man with eyes like frost, stood waiting, his presence heavy, like he owned the air. "Charles, stay," Ryan said. "She needs to learn the part." Amara's stomach dropped. "The hell does that mean?" Ryan stepped closer, his shadow swallowing the neon glow. "It means you're my wife now on paper, and the board needs to buy it." His voice was calm, but his eyes were fire, daring her to back down. "Kiss me." Her jaw dropped. "You're fucking kidding." "Do I look like I'm kidding?" He tilted his head, a smirk tugging at his lips, but his eyes were dark, intense, like he was testing her and himself. "Charles is here to make sure it's convincing. The board's watching, so let's practice." Amara's heart pounded, a drumbeat drowning out reason. She glanced at Charles, whose icy stare made her skin crawl, then back at Ryan. That smirk was gone, replaced by something raw, like he wasn't sure what he was unleashing. She should have bolted, should have told him to shove his contract where the sun didn't shine. But the money, her mom's frail hands, Darius's defeated shrug, they held her like chains. "Fine," she muttered, stepping forward, sneakers squeaking. "Let's get this over with." Ryan didn't hesitate. His hand shot out, fingers wrapping around her waist, firm but not rough, pulling her against him. The heat of his body slammed into her like a wave, his chest hard under his crisp shirt. Her breath caught as his other hand cupped her jaw, tilting her face up. The neon lights danced in his eyes, red and gold flickering like a storm. "Don't half-ass it," he murmured, so low only she could hear. "Make it real." Before she could snap back, his lips crashed into hers. It wasn't soft, wasn't sweet. It was raw, like he was claiming something he didn't understand. His mouth was hot, demanding, tasting of whiskey and sin. Amara froze for a split second, hands hovering. Then instinct took over. She grabbed his shirt, fingers curling into the fabric, pulling him closer even as her mind screamed to push him away. The kiss deepened, his tongue brushing hers, sending a jolt down her spine. Her pulse roared, drowning out the city's hum. The ice in his glass, Charles's sharp cough. All she felt was the press of his hand on her waist, the scrape of his stubble against her skin, the way his breath hitched when she bit his lip, hard enough to say, "I'm not yours." The neon glow pulsed behind her closed eyelids, painting their shadows on the glass. A tangle of defiance and desire. His cologne wrapped around her, woodsy and sharp, mixing with the faint coffee scent from her shift. Her body betrayed her, leaning into him, fingers tightening on his shirt as the kiss stretched into something dangerous, something neither expected. She broke away first, shoving him back, chest heaving. Her lips tingled, face burning. "That real enough for you?" She spat, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. Ryan didn't move, eyes locked on her, dark and unreadable. His shirt was wrinkled where she'd grabbed it, his breath uneven. "Yeah," he said, voice rough, like gravel. "That'll do." Charles cleared his throat, muttering about discretion and slipping out, his footsteps sharp on the marble. Amara glared at Ryan, heart still racing. "Don't ever pull that shit again." He raised an eyebrow, adjusting his tie, but his eyes didn't leave her. "You signed the contract, Johnson. This is the deal now." She grabbed her backpack, slinging it over her shoulder. "Then you better keep up, Wilson. I'm not here to lose." She stormed out, the elevator doors hissing shut. The city's pulse swallowed her footsteps, but she could still feel his lips, his hands, the way her body had wanted more. She shook it off, focusing on the cold night air, the subway ride to Harlem. She'd play his game, but on her terms. Back in the penthouse, Ryan stood alone, neon lights casting sharp shadows across his face. He poured another whiskey, ice clinking like a challenge. He'd expected her to buckle, to be a pawn in his boardroom chess. But that kiss, damn that kiss, it wasn't just convincing, it was a spark, and it burned deeper than he'd admit. He glanced at the contract, her signature bold and angry. This was supposed to be simple, a way to secure his empire, so why did it feel like he'd just lit a fuse he couldn't control? Amara stepped into the penthouse the next evening, duffel bag heavy on her shoulder. The place was a cathedral of glass and chrome, all sharp lines and no soul. The Manhattan skyline glittered below, a million lights mocking her with their promise of freedom. She dropped her bag by the door, sneakers echoing in the silence. This was her cage now, for 6 months. She'd make it work, for her mom, for Darius, for herself. Ryan appeared from the hallway, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, a glass of something dark in his hand. He didn't speak, just watched her, eyes tracing her like she was a poem he couldn't read. The air crackled, heavy with the memory of that kiss. "You settling in?" he asked, voice casual but edged. She met his gaze, unflinching. "Don't get comfy, Wilson. I'm not here to stay." He smirked, taking a sip. "We'll see." She turned away, heading for the guest room, but his voice stopped her. "Amara." She froze, back to him. He'd never said her name like that. Soft, almost human. She didn't turn around. "What?" "Don't make this harder than it has to be." She laughed, sharp and bitter. Too late for that. She walked away, the door clicking shut. But in the dark, with the city's glow seeping through the blinds, she knew one thing. Ryan Wilson wasn't just a problem, he was a fire. And she wasn't sure if she wanted to put it out, or let it burn. Hey, that kiss was pure heat. Will Amara outsmart Ryan's game or get burned? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment to join the ride. The penthouse was a damn icebox, all gleaming chrome and glass that felt like a slap to Amara Johnson's soul. She stood in the guest room, her duffel bag still half-packed on the too pristine bed, its white sheets screaming wealth she'd never touch. The Manhattan skyline glittered through the wall of windows, a million lights that watched her like they knew she didn't belong. She'd been here 4 days, playing Ryan Wilson's fake wife, and every second felt like a lie stitched into her skin. That contract she'd signed, 6 months as his prop to secure his CEO seat, hung over her like a guillotine. Her mom's hospital bills were paid, Darius's debts were on hold, but the cost was her freedom and maybe her heart. She yanked her curls into a loose bun, catching her reflection in the mirrored closet. Her faded Harlem corner store t-shirt and ripped jeans were a middle finger to the penthouse's sterile vibe. She wasn't built for this. Fancy events, fake smiles, or the way Ryan's eyes burned into her, like he was trying to crack a code. That kiss in his office 4 nights ago still scorched her mind. The heat of his hands, the way her body had betrayed her, wanting more even as she shoved him away. She shook it off, grabbing her sneakers. She wasn't here to feel, she was here to survive. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jada Miles, her best friend and Harlem's event queen. "Yo, you hittin' Rhythm Haven tonight? Need your poems to burn the mic." Amara's lips twitched, a smile breaking through. Jada was her ride or die, the one who'd pushed her to spit poetry at open mics, who'd held her hand when her mom's diagnosis hit. But before she could reply, the penthouse intercom crackled. "Miss Johnson?" A sharp female voice, all business. "This is Lila Carver, Mr. Wilson's counsel. I'm here with your wardrobe." Amara's stomach twisted. Wardrobe? She buzzed the woman in, and minutes later, Lila swept into the penthouse like she owned it. She was tall, all sleek lines and flawless skin, her navy blazer and pencil skirt screaming power. Her dark hair was pulled into a tight chignon, her eyes raking over Amara with a smile that was more knife than warmth. A rack of dresses followed, pushed by a nervous assistant who bolted at the first chance. "So you're the new Mrs. Wilson," Lila said, her voice dripping with amusement. "Cute shirt, very Harlem corner store." Amara crossed her arms, leaning against the counter. "What's your deal, lady?" "I didn't ask for a fashion show." Lila laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Oh, honey, you're not ready for tonight's event. Ryan's orders. Clean you up, make you look like you belong." She gestured at the dresses, all silk and shimmer. "Unless you want to roll up in that thrift store vibe." Amara's jaw clenched. "I'm not your honey, and I don't need your pity dresses. Suit yourself," Lila said, shrugging, but her eyes glinted with something sharp. "Ryan's got everything riding on this. Fuck it up and you're not just embarrassing him. You're done." She turned to the assistant, snapping her fingers. "Leave the rack. She'll figure it out." The assistant vanished, and Lila sauntered out, her heels clicking like a countdown. Amara stared at the dresses, her reflection warped in their shine. She wasn't some doll to be dressed up, but the contract loomed. 6 months, play the part. She grabbed a deep crimson dress, the fabric cool against her skin, and muttered, "Fine, Wilson, let's play." Rhythm Haven was Harlem's heartbeat. A cramped bar with brick walls, golden stage lights, and the smell of coffee and old wood. The crowd was alive. Locals in hoodies, poets in berets, artists with paint-splattered jeans, snapping and shouting as a performer spat verses that hit like bullets. The air thrummed with soul music, a slow bass line weaving through the chatter, the clink of beer bottles, the hum of a city that never slept. Amara felt at home here, even in the crimson dress that hugged her curves too tight, her heels wobbling on the uneven floor. But Ryan was at her side, his black suit sharp as a blade, his hand brushing her lower back. The touch sent a spark through her, and she fought the urge to pull away. "Smile," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "They're watching." She gritted her teeth, forcing a grin. "You owe me big for this, asshole." His lips twitched, but he didn't reply. They moved through the crowd, his hand guiding her like she was his damn trophy. Poets nodded at Amara, recognizing her from open mics, but their eyes slid to Ryan. Curious, wary, she caught whispers. Who's the suit? What's she doing with him? And her chest burned. This was her world, her stage, and he was invading it. Then Lila appeared, her blazer swapped for a sleek black dress, her smile sharp as ever. "Ryan, darling," she purred, kissing his cheek, her hand lingering on his arm. "You look good in Harlem. And your wife?" She turned to Amara, eyes glinting. Bold choice, going for the corner store vibe. Amara's fists clenched, but she kept her voice steady. "You got a problem, Lila? Spit it out." Lila laughed, sipping her wine. "No problem, just intrigued. Ryan's used to women with class, not cashiers from the block." Ryan's hand tightened on Amara's back, his voice low. "Enough, Lila. She's here. Deal with it." Lila raised an eyebrow, unfazed. "Oh, I'm dealing. Just hope she can keep up." She glided off, leaving a cloud of perfume and tension. Amara spun to Ryan, voice a hiss. "What the hell was that? You let her talk to me like I'm trash?" "She's nobody," he said, eyes scanning the room. "Ignore her." "Nobody, my ass," Amara snapped. "You think I give a shit about your boardroom buddies? I'm here for my mom, for Darius, not your ego." His gaze snapped to hers, sharp, unreadable. "Then act like it, Johnson. This isn't your corner store. You're my wife tonight, so play the part, or this deal's off." Her chest burned, anger and humiliation twisting like a knife. She wanted to slap him, to walk out and let his empire crumble. But the thought of her mom's hospital bed, Darius's voice saying he'd figure it out, kept her rooted. She swallowed hard, nodding once. "Fine, but don't expect me to like it." The MC's voice boomed, calling Amara to the stage. Her heart lurched. She hadn't planned to perform, but Jada had slipped her name on the list. Ryan raised an eyebrow, surprised. "You're up," he said, voice softer, almost curious. She didn't look at him, just stepped onto the stage, the golden lights hot against her skin. The crowd hushed, the bass line fading to a low hum. She gripped the mic, voice steady, and let the words spill. A poem about Harlem, about roots deep as concrete, about a woman who burned without breaking. Her verses were fire, each line a jab, her curls bouncing as she moved, the crimson dress catching the light like a beacon. The crowd snapped, cheered, their energy feeding hers. She felt alive, untouchable, until she saw Ryan in the shadows, his eyes locked on her, intense, like she was the only thing in the room. When she stepped off, the crowd still roaring. He was there, waiting in the dim hallway behind the stage. His suit jacket was off, shirt sleeves rolled up, eyes dark with something she couldn't name. That was... He paused, searching for the word. "Real." She crossed her arms, breath still uneven from the performance. "Don't sound so shocked, Wilson. I'm not your prop up there." "I know," he said, stepping closer, voice low, rough. The hallway was tight, the golden lights casting a warm glow across his face, making him look less like a tycoon and more like a man. "But you're making this harder than it needs to be." Her heart slammed against her ribs, the air thick with the memory of their kiss. "You're the one making it crazy," she said, voice trembling. "Pushing me, acting like I'm yours." He stepped closer, close enough that she felt the heat of him, the faint scent of sandalwood and sweat. "Maybe I want you to be," he murmured, his hand hovering near her cheek, not touching, like he was afraid she'd bolt. The world tilted. The bass line thrummed through the walls, a slow, sultry pulse matching her heartbeat. She should have walked away, should have shut this down. But her body leaned toward him, drawn like a moth to flame. "You don't get to say that," she said, voice shaking. "Not after parading me like a damn prize." His hand moved, fingers grazing her jaw, slow, deliberate, like he was memorizing her. "You're not a prize," he said, thumb brushing her lip, sending a shiver down her spine. "You're a fucking inferno." Her breath caught, and before she could think, she grabbed his shirt, pulling him into her. His lips crashed into hers, Not like the office kiss. This was deeper, hungrier, like he was starving, and she was the only thing that could fill him. The golden lights pulsed, casting their shadows on the brick wall. A tangle of need and defiance. His hand slid to her waist, strong, possessive, pressing her against the wall. Her legs parted slightly, his thigh brushing hers, the heat of him overwhelming. The kiss was a storm. Teeth grazing, tongues tangling, her nails digging into his shoulders. His stubble scraped her skin, his breath hot against her neck as he broke away, trailing kisses down her throat. "Amara," he growled, her name vibrating through her, raw and real. The sound lit her up, her fingers tightening in his hair. The wall was cool against her back, but his hands were fire, one sliding under her dress, tracing the curve of her hip. She arched into him, a soft gasp escaping, drowned by the soul music's bass and the frantic beat of her heart. The hallway's hum faded, leaving only the rhythm of their breaths, the faint creak of his shoes as he pressed closer. Her body burned, wanting more, but her mind screamed, "This is a contract, not real." She pulled back, breathless, shoving him away. "We're done here," she said, voice hoarse, lips tingling. Ryan didn't move, eyes dark, chest heaving. "Amara, don't." She cut him off, straightening her dress, hands shaking. "You don't get to do this. Not tonight." He nodded once, stepping back, jaw tight. "Fair enough." She turned, heading back to the crowd, the music swallowing her footsteps, but the heat of his touch lingered, a spark she couldn't shake. She was in deep and she hated it. Back at Rhythm Haven, Ryan stood by the bar, his whiskey untouched. The crowd buzzed, but all he saw was Amara, her words on stage, her fire, the way she'd burned through his walls with that kiss. He'd pushed her too far, and damn, it felt like she'd pushed him further. This was a contract, a means to an end. So why was he chasing a woman who'd rather set his world ablaze than join it? Amara caught a cab back to the penthouse, the driver's radio playing Marvin Gaye, his voice a bomb against the chaos in her head. She kicked off her heels at the door, the crimson dress pooling on the floor as she changed into sweats. The city lights mocked her from the window, but she ignored them, curling up on the couch with her poetry journal. She hadn't written in weeks, not since the bills piled up, but her pen moved now, tracing lines about a man whose eyes held storms, whose touch was a poem she couldn't finish. She froze when the door opened. Ryan's footsteps were slow, deliberate, his shadow falling across the room. He didn't speak, just stood there, suit rumpled, a bottle of bourbon in his hand. The silence stretched, heavy with everything they weren't saying. "You left," he said finally, voice low, almost accusing. "Yeah," she said, closing her journal. "You got a problem with that?" He stepped closer, setting the bottle on the counter with a soft clink. "You're good," he said, glancing at the journal. "Why'd you stop?" She stiffened, caught off guard. "Life stopped me. Not that you'd get it." He leaned back, studying her, the neon glow catching the planes of his face. "Try me." She wanted to shut him out, to keep her walls up, but something in his voice, tired, almost raw, made her pause. She hugged the journal to her chest, voice soft. "It's not about stopping. It's about carrying too much to dream." He didn't reply, just watched her, the air shifting, charged with something unspoken. She stood, ready to bolt, but his hand caught her wrist, gentle but firm. "Stay," he said, not a command, not a question. She pulled free, heart racing. "Don't push me, Ryan. I'm not ready for whatever this is." He nodded, letting her go. "Fair enough." She walked to her room, the door clicking shut behind her. But as she lay in the dark, the memory of his touch, his voice, the way he'd looked at her, kept her awake. This wasn't just a contract anymore. It was a fire, and she wasn't sure she could outrun it. The penthouse was a damn tomb, its glass walls reflecting the neon glow of Manhattan, like a mirror for Amara Johnson's restless thoughts. She sat cross-legged on the living room floor, her poetry journal open in her lap, charcoal smudging her fingers. The city skyline pulsed through the windows, a jagged sprawl of lights that felt like they were mocking her. It was past midnight, and Ryan Wilson was still out, probably in some boardroom or bar, sealing deals with men who'd never know the weight of a hospital bill. She hadn't seen him since the Rhythm Haven Poetry Slam 2 nights ago, since that kiss in the hallway that left her skin burning and her heart in knots. She'd told herself it was nothing, just the contract screwing with her head, but her pen kept tracing the sharp curve of his jaw, the storm in his eyes. She ripped the page out, crumpling it. "Get your shit together, Amara," she muttered. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jada Miles. "Girl, you good? You slayed at Rhythm Haven, but you bounced quick. Spill." Amara's lips twitched, a faint smile breaking through. Jada was her rock. The one who'd dragged her to her first open mic, who'd cheered loudest when Amara's words set the room ablaze. But before she could reply, the penthouse door clicked open. Ryan stepped in, his tie loose. Dark hair mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. He carried the faint scent of bourbon and city air, his suit jacket slung over one shoulder. His eyes found her immediately, and for a second, the room felt smaller, the air thicker. "You're up," he said, voice low, rough, like he hadn't slept in days. "Couldn't sleep," she said, closing her journal, heart kicking up a notch. "You look like hell." He smirked, dropping his jacket on the couch. "Thanks. Rough night." She raised an eyebrow, standing, her oversized t-shirt slipping off one shoulder. "What, your empire crumbling already?" "Something like that." He moved to the kitchen, the clink of a glass against the counter echoing in the silence. He poured bourbon, the amber liquid catching the neon glow. "Want one?" She hesitated, then shrugged. "Sure, why not?" He slid a glass toward her, fingers brushing hers for a split second. The touch was brief, but it sent a jolt through her, like a spark in a dry field. She took a sip, the burn grounding her, and leaned against the counter, watching him. He was different tonight, less guarded, shoulders slumping just enough to hint at something heavy. "What's got you so fucked up?" she asked, voice softer than she meant. He didn't answer right away, staring at the city through the window, reflection sharp against the glass. "You ever feel like you're fighting a war you didn't sign up for?" She blinked, caught off guard. Every damn day, she thought of her mom's oxygen tank, Darius's late-night calls about his debts, the dreams she'd buried under bills. "But you? You're Ryan Wilson. What war's got you?" He turned, eyes locking on hers, dark and unreadable. "You wouldn't get it." "Try me," she said, echoing his words from the slam, voice daring him to let her in. He took a step closer, bourbon glass dangling from his fingers. The kitchen was dim, neon from outside, and the fridge's faint glow casting gold streaks across his face. "My ex," he said finally, voice low, like it cost him to say. "Sarah. She didn't just leave. She gutted me, took up with my business partner, said I was too busy building an empire to love her. Maybe she was right." He paused, jaw tight. Then the panic attack started. "Can't breathe, can't think. The board's been sniffing around ever since, waiting for me to crack. That's why you're here." Amara's breath caught, fingers tightening on her glass. "So I'm your Band-Aid? That's cold even for you." His eyes softened just a fraction. "You're not a Band-Aid. You're—" He stopped, like the word was too big to say. The air shifted, heavy with something unspoken. He stepped closer, close enough that she felt the heat of him, the faint scent of bourbon and cologne. "You're not like anyone else," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "You don't break," she laughed, short and bitter. "Bullshit. I'm breaking right now, standing in your damn penthouse." "No," he said, hand reaching out, hovering near her cheek, but not touching. "You're burning, and it's driving me crazy." Her heart slammed against her ribs, breath shallow. The fridge's hum was the only sound, a low drone pulsing with her heartbeat. She should have stepped back, should have shut this down, but her body leaned toward him, drawn like a spark to kindling. "You're the one making this crazy," she said, voice trembling. "Pushing me, acting like I'm yours." His hand moved, fingers grazing her jaw, slow, like he was afraid she'd shatter. "Maybe I want you to be," he murmured, thumb brushing her lip, sending a shiver down her spine. The world spun. Her glass hit the counter with a soft clink, hands finding his chest, fingers curling into his shirt. He pulled her in, lips crashing into hers, not like the office or the poetry slam. This was deeper, hungrier, like he was drowning and she was air. The neon light pulsed behind her eyelids, gold and red blurring into a haze. His hands slid to her waist, strong, lifting her onto the counter, her legs parted, his body fitting between them, heat overwhelming. The kiss was a tempest, teeth grazing, tongues tangling, her nails digging into his shoulders. His stubble scraped her skin, breath hot against her neck as he broke away, trailing kisses down her throat. "Amara," he whispered, her name a low growl vibrating through her. The sound lit her up, fingers tightening in his hair. The counter was cold against her thighs, but his hands were fire, one sliding under her t-shirt, tracing her spine. She arched into him, a soft gasp escaping, drowned by the city's distant hum and her frantic heartbeat. The neon flickered, their shadows merging on the wall, a tangle of need and defiance. She pulled him closer, lips finding his again. The taste of bourbon and him mixing into something addictive. For a moment, nothing else existed. No contract, no board, no past, just them, burning brighter than the city outside. But then his phone buzzed, sharp and insistent, shattering the haze. He froze, hand still on her back, breath ragged. "Damn it," he muttered, pulling away, eyes dark with frustration. He grabbed the phone, glancing at the screen. His face changed, softness gone, replaced by something cold, hard. "What?" Amara asked, sliding off the counter, legs shaky, voice hoarse. He didn't answer, staring at the phone, jaw tight. "Get your stuff," he said finally, voice clipped. "We need to talk." Her stomach dropped. The hell does that mean? He turned, eyes meeting hers, but they were different now. Distant, guarded. "Jada sent me something about Lila and my dad." Amara's blood ran cold. "Jada? Her Jada? What about them?" she asked, voice barely steady. "They're trying to take me down," he said, voice low, venomous. "Lila's been working with Charles, my father, to flip the board. They're using you, the contract, to paint me as unstable." Her heart cracked, anger flaring over hurt. "Using me, and you knew? You fucking knew and didn't tell me?" "I didn't know the whole play," he said, stepping closer, eyes narrowing. "I thought I could handle it, keep you out of it." "But you—" He stopped, voice breaking. "You're in deeper than I thought." Her hands shook, voice rising. "You used me as bait in your damn war! You think I'd play along if I knew? Screw you, Ryan!" His face didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Guilt, maybe pain. "I was protecting you," he said, voice flat. "Get out. Now." She laughed, jagged, grabbing her journal from the floor. "You don't get to kick me out. I'm already gone." She stormed to her room, shoving clothes into her duffel, hands trembling. Before she left, she tore a poem from her journal, the one she'd written tonight, about a man who burned too bright to trust, and left it on the counter. "Keep it," she said, not looking back. "Maybe it'll remind you what a prick you are." The elevator doors closed, the hum swallowing her footsteps. She didn't cry, not yet. She'd save that for the subway, for Harlem, for the world that made sense. Amara ended up at Holy Light Church in Harlem, a small sanctuary where the air smelled of wax and old hymnals. The pews were empty, stained glass windows glowing faintly under streetlights. She sank into a back row, duffel bag at her feet, letting the silence wrap around her. Jada was there, braids tucked under a scarf, sliding a coffee across the pew. "You look like you just fought the devil," Jada said, eyes narrowing. "What's up with Mr. Billionaire?" Amara took a sip, the bitter warmth grounding her. "He's an asshole. Knew his dad and that lawyer bitch Lila were playing me, and he didn't say shit. Kicked me out when I called him on it." Jada whistled, leaning back. "Damn, that's cold. But you're Harlem Fire. What's the plan?" Amara stared at the coffee cup, fingers tracing the rim. "I don't know. Mom's bills are paid for now, but Darius is still a mess. And me?" She laughed, bitter. "I was dumb enough to think he saw me, not just the contract." Jada reached over, squeezing her hand. "He saw you, Amara. That's why he's scared. Men like that? They don't know how to handle real." Amara managed a small smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. The organ hummed faintly, a low gospel note curling through the air like a memory. She closed her eyes, seeing Ryan's face, the way he'd whispered her name. She hated him. She hated herself more for wanting him still. Back in the penthouse, Ryan stood in the kitchen, bourbon bottle untouched. Amara's poem lay on the counter, words cutting deeper than any blade. "You burn like a star, but stars don't love. They consume." He'd fucked up, he knew it, but Jada's text, a screenshot of emails between Lila and Charles, had hit like a sledgehammer. They'd planned to use Amara's fake marriage to sway the board, paint him as a loose cannon. He'd tried to shield her, but he'd only pushed her away. He picked up the poem, fingers tracing her angry looping script. "Damn it, Amara," he muttered, voice breaking in the silence. The city lights mocked him, their glow cold, empty. He'd lost her, and the truth clawed at him. She wasn't just a contract. She was the only thing that felt real in his world of glass and lies. Harlem's streets were a gritty symphony, the air thick with the scent of fried plantains and exhaust, streetlights buzzing like a heartbeat under the night sky. Amara Johnson stood outside her mom's cramped apartment, the chipped brownstone steps cold against her jeans. It was 2 a.m., and the city was alive, car horns blaring, a drunk yelling at shadows, hip-hop thumping from a passing car. She'd left Holy Light Church hours ago, Jada's words, "Your Harlem fire," ringing in her ears. But right now, she didn't feel like fire. She felt like ash, Ryan Wilson's betrayal. Get out, cutting deeper than she'd ever admit. Her duffel bag slumped against the stoop, her poetry journal poking out, edges frayed from nights of spilling her soul. She hadn't gone inside yet. Her mom would see the hurt in her eyes, and Darius would grill her until she cracked. Amara wasn't ready to admit she'd let herself fall for a man who used her as a pawn in his corporate chess game. She pulled her hoodie tighter, the night air biting her skin, and sank onto the steps. The concrete was hard, grounding, a reminder of who she was. Amara Johnson, not some fake billionaire's wife. Her phone buzzed, a text from Darius. "Where you at?" Ma's worried. Amara sighed, typing back, "Outside. Be up soon." She didn't have the energy to explain why she was back, why the penthouse, Ryan's sterile, glittering cage, was no longer her problem. She leaned her head against the railing, closing her eyes. The memory of his hands on her waist, his lips on her neck, burning like a brand. "Fuck you, Ryan," she whispered, voice swallowed by the city's hum. Inside the penthouse, Ryan stood in the dark, the neon glow painting jagged streaks across the glass walls. Amara's poem lay on the counter, her words slicing through him like a knife. "You burn like a star, but stars don't love. They consume." He gripped the bourbon bottle but didn't pour. The burn in his chest wasn't thirst. It was guilt, sharp and relentless, ever since she'd stormed out. He'd been a prick, he knew it. Letting Jada's text, a screenshot of emails between Lila Carver and his father Charles, turn him into the kind of man he'd sworn he'd never be. Cold, paranoid, alone. He sank onto the couch, leather creaking under his weight. The silence was brutal, broken only by the faint hum of the fridge. The same fridge where he'd lifted her, kissed her, felt her pulse under his fingers. He'd fucked it all up, trying to shield her from his father's game, only to push her straight into the fire. He picked up the poem, thumb tracing her angry script. She'd seen him, really seen him, and he'd thrown it back in her face. "Damn it, Amara," he muttered, voice breaking in the empty room. His phone lit up, a call from Charles. He ignored it. He didn't need another lecture about securing the board or cleaning up his image. The board's clause, married to prove stability, was a noose, and Amara was caught in it. All he could see was her face, the fire in her eyes when she'd said, "Screw you, Wilson." He'd been wrong, and admitting it felt like swallowing glass. Amara woke to the smell of antiseptic and stale coffee. The hospital's fluorescent lights harsh against her eyelids. She'd crashed on the couch in her mom's apartment, but a morning call from the nurse had her rushing to the ICU. Her mom's heart condition had flared, another bill piling onto the stack. Now she sat by her mom's bed, the beep of the monitor relentless. Her mom looked fragile, skin ashen, hands curled around the IV line, but her eyes, sharp as ever, pinned Amara in place. "You look like you've been through hell, baby," her mom said, voice raspy but warm. "What's eating you?" Amara forced a smile, adjusting the blanket. "Just tired, Ma. Work's been rough." Her mom snorted, weak but defiant. "Don't bullshit me, Amara. I raised you better." "Spill." Amara hesitated, throat tight. She couldn't tell her about the contract, the penthouse, the way Ryan's kiss had made her forget who she was. "It's nothing," she said finally. "Just guy trouble." Her mom's eyebrow arched. "Guy trouble? You? Since when?" "Since I was dumb enough to think he was different," Amara muttered, fingers twisting the hem of her hoodie. "He's a liar, Ma. Thought I was part of his game." Her mom's face softened, voice low. "Your daddy was a liar too, left us high and dry. But you're my fire, Amara. If this man can't see that, he ain't worth your tears." Amara nodded, eyes stinging, but she didn't cry. She never did, not in front of her mom. She kissed her forehead, promising to be back, and headed out. The hospital's cold air clinging to her skin. She needed to move, to work, to bury the hurt under something real. She picked up a shift at Harlem Corner Store, the tiny grocery where she'd rung up canned goods and lotto tickets for years. The jingle of the bell, the hum of the cooler, the chatter of regulars. It was her world, loud and messy, nothing like Ryan's sterile empire. Ryan stared at the boardroom table, The Manhattan skyline a gray blur through the tinted windows. His team droned on about stock dips, Lila's latest pitch for a merger to stabilize the company. He barely listened, mind stuck on Amara's poem, her voice cracking when she'd said, "Fuck you, Wilson." Charles, sitting across from him, cleared his throat, sliding a tablet across the table. "Lila's right," he said. "We need a new narrative. Cut the girl loose, stage a clean break. The board's spooked by your distraction." Ryan's jaw tightened, hand curling into a fist. "She's not a distraction," he said, voice low, dangerous. "She's not a prop either." Charles blinked, surprised. "Since when do you care?" "She signed the contract. Use her or lose her." Ryan stood, chair scraping the floor. "Meeting's over," he said, voice flat but final. He walked out, ignoring the stunned faces, pulse pounding. He'd spent years bowing to Charles's games, but Amara had changed the rules. Losing her wasn't just a business problem, it was personal. He ended up at a dive bar in Hell's Kitchen. Not his usual sleek lounges, but a hole in the wall with sticky floors and a jukebox spitting out Aretha Franklin. He ordered a whiskey, the burn doing nothing to dull the ache. His phone buzzed. Lila, with a smug text. "Told you she'd run. Need a real partner?" He deleted it, thumb hovering over Amara's number. He didn't call. He didn't deserve to. Amara's shift at Harlem Corner Store stretched into the night, the fluorescent lights buzzing like a headache. She rang up groceries, her arms aching, mind replaying Ryan's face, the way he'd looked at her like she'd gutted him. She hated how much it hurt, how much she missed the penthouse. Not the luxury, but the moments when he'd let his guard down, when he'd seen her. She was bagging chips when her phone rang, Darius's name flashing. "Amara," Darius said, voice tight, panicked. "They're taking the house. Bank's foreclosing, missed too many payments. I fucked up." Amara's heart stopped. "What, when?" "Next week if I don't pay up," he said, voice breaking. "I tried, sis. I can't do this." "Stay put," Amara said, dropping the scanner, hands shaking. "I'm coming." She grabbed her jacket, ignoring her boss's protests, and ran to the apartment, the city's cold air stinging her lungs. Darius sat on the couch, head in his hands, his old army jacket crumpled beside him. "I thought I could handle it," he whispered. "Didn't want to burden you." Amara's stomach churned. The contract money was tied up in her mom's bills. They had nothing left. "We'll fix this," she said, voice breaking. "You're not losing the house." The night was silent. Darius's heavy breaths, the only sound. Amara didn't sleep, mind racing. She hadn't written poetry since the penthouse. Hadn't let herself dream. The weight of it, her mom, Darius, Ryan, crushed her, and for the first time she let herself cry, sobs quiet, swallowed by the city's noise. The next morning Amara dragged herself to the store, eyes red, body heavy. She was restocking shelves when Jada burst in, braids swinging, grin wide. "Girl, you gotta see this," she said, shoving a flyer into Amara's hands. It was for Harlem Poetry Slam, a community event at Rhythm Haven. "They want you on the mic. Your name's on the list." Amara frowned, scanning the flyer. "I didn't sign up for shit." "Someone did," Jada said, winking. "Bet it's your suit, playing ghostwriter." Amara's heart twisted, hope and anger colliding. "Ryan? After kicking her out?" "No way," she said, but her fingers tightened on the flyer. "He's done with me." "Then prove him wrong," Jada said, voice firm. "Get on that stage. Spit your truth." Amara stared at the flyer, the neon streetlights outside the store casting a red glow across it. She didn't know if Ryan was behind it. Didn't know if she could trust her heart not to break again. But the thought of poetry, of reclaiming her voice, sparked a fire she'd thought was dead. She nodded, tucking the flyer into her pocket. "All right," she said, voice steady for the first time in days. "I'm in." Back in the penthouse, Ryan sat at his desk, Amara's poem propped against a stack of contracts. He'd found the Harlem Poetry Slam flyer in his assistant's email, a favor he'd called in anonymously, a way to give Amara something without begging for forgiveness he didn't deserve. He didn't expect her to show up, didn't expect her to ever look at him again. But as he stared at her words, her script staring back, he knew one thing. He wasn't done fighting. Not for his empire, not for his pride, but for her. He picked up his phone, scrolling to her number. His thumb hovered, the neon glow outside pulsing like a heartbeat. He didn't call, not yet, but the fire she'd lit in him wasn't going out, and he'd be damned if he let it burn alone. Rhythm Haven was Harlem's soul laid bare, a brick-walled bar pulsing with raw energy, packed to the brim with poets, dreamers, and locals who lived for the mics. Golden stage lights bled across the crowd. Kids in snapbacks, elders in church hats, artists with ink-stained hands, snapping and hollering as a poet spat verses that hit like thunder. The air was thick with coffee, bourbon, and the low hum of soul music, a bass line weaving through the chatter like Harlem's heartbeat. Amara Johnson stood by the stage, her hands smudged with charcoal from nervous doodling, heart pounding like a drum. She'd spent the last 3 days writing, pouring her rage, her hurt, her fire into poems that now weighed heavy in her journal. Tonight wasn't just a performance. It was her reclaiming her voice, her stage, her city. She wore a black leather jacket over a crimson top, her curls loose and wild, catching the light like a crown. The flyer for Harlem Poetry Slam had brought her here, a chance to be Amara again, not Ryan Wilson's contract wife. But Jada's words, "Bet it's your suit playing ghostwriter," gnawed at her. Was he behind this? And if he was, what the hell did he want? She pushed the thought down, nodding at a poet who clapped her shoulder. This was her night, her fight. She wasn't letting him steal it. The crowd swelled, voices a chaotic hum over an Aretha Franklin track curling through the speakers. Amara was adjusting her journal when Jada burst through, braids swinging, grin wide as the Hudson. "Girl, you're about to burn this place down," she said, pulling Amara into a hug. "Ready to spit that truth?" Amara laughed, the sound rough but real. "Yeah, but don't jinx me." Still waiting for the mic to choke. "It won't," Jada said, nudging her. "Heads up, though, I saw a slick-ass car outside. $10 says it's your man." Amara's stomach flipped, smile fading. "He's not my man," she said. But her eyes darted to the entrance, pulse racing. She hadn't seen Ryan since she'd stormed out, since he'd hidden his father's plot and kicked her out like trash. The hurt still burned, but so did the memory of his lips, his hands, the way he'd whispered her name like it was a poem. "If he shows, he's getting a piece of my mind," she muttered. Before she could brace herself, the crowd parted, and there he was, Ryan Wilson, out of place in his tailored black coat, dark hair catching the golden stage lights, his eyes locked on hers, fierce and unyielding, like a beacon cutting through fog. The room seemed to shrink, music fading to a dull roar. He moved toward her, slow, deliberate, crowd's chatter falling away. Amara's hands clenched, nails biting into her palms. "What the hell are you doing here?" she said, voice low, sharp. He stopped a foot away, close enough that she caught his cologne. Sandalwood, sharp, familiar. "I needed to see you," he said, voice low, rough, like he'd been fighting himself to get here. "You saw me," she said, crossing her arms, leather jacket creaking. "Now get out." He didn't move, eyes searching hers, softer than she'd ever seen, but still burning. "I was wrong," he said, words heavy, like they'd been carved from stone. "About you, about my dad, about everything. I fucked up, Amara, and I'm sorry." Her heart stuttered, but she held her ground, voice cold. "Sorry doesn't fix shit, Ryan. You used me. You lied. You threw me out like I was nothing." "You're not nothing," he said, stepping closer, voice dropping to a raw whisper. "You're the only thing that's ever felt real in this fucked up world of mine, and I was too damn scared to see it." The words hit like a punch, stealing her breath. The stage lights flickered, casting shadows across his face, making him look younger, broken. She wanted to shove him, to scream, but her body betrayed her, leaning toward him, drawn by the heat in his eyes. "You don't get to say that," she said, voice shaking. "Not after what you did." "I know," he said, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. The contract, edges worn. He held it up, eyes never leaving hers. "This was a mistake. Not you, not us, but this." He tore it in half, the rip loud in the quiet bubble around them, letting the pieces fall to the floor. The crowd murmured, heads turning, but Amara barely noticed. Her throat tightened, eyes burning. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "I don't want a fake wife," he said, voice steady now, raw. "I want you, Amara. For real. No contracts, no games. Just you." Time stopped. The soul music swelled, Aretha's voice soaring, wrapping around them like a spell. Amara's hands trembled, heart a war between fear and want. She stepped forward, closing the gap, voice barely audible. "You broke me, Ryan. How do I trust you?" He reached for her hand, fingers warm, gentle, like he was afraid she'd break. "You don't have to trust me yet," he said. "Just give me a chance to earn it." The stage lights danced in his eyes, golden and warm, and something in her cracked open. She didn't think, didn't plan. She grabbed his coat, pulled him into the shadowed hallway behind the stage, and kissed him. It was fire, fierce and desperate, her lips crashing into his, hands fisting in his hair. He groaned, low and raw, arms wrapping around her, pulling her flush against him. The world melted away. Crowds roar fading, leaving only the thump of her pulse, the heat of his mouth, the scrape of his stubble against her skin. His hands slid under her jacket, fingers tracing her spine, hot and deliberate. The golden lights cast a hazy glow, their shadows merging on the brick wall, a tangle of need and forgiveness. Her breath hitched as his lips moved to her neck, a soft bite sending sparks down her spine. The music pulsed, bass vibrating through her, matching the rhythm of their bodies pressed together. His cologne mixed with the faint coffee scent on her hands, a dizzying blend of him and her, and for a moment, nothing else mattered. Amara. He murmured against her skin, her name a plea, a prayer. She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, chest heaving. "Don't make me regret this," she said, voice fierce, fingers still tangled in his coat. "Never," he said, thumb brushing her lip, eyes burning with something deeper than desire, something like love. They might have stayed there, lost in each other. But a sharp voice cut through. "Well, isn't this poetic?" Lila Carver stood at the hallway's edge, black dress a slash of venom, smile cold. The crowd's eyes turned, whispers rippling. "Ryan, you're making a fool of yourself." And with her, Amara stiffened. But Ryan's arm stayed around her, grip firm. "Walk away, Lila," he said, voice low, deadly. "This isn't your stage." Lila laughed, eyes glinting. "Oh, it's everyone's stage now. Check your phone, darling. I sent a little gift to the press. Your cashier's fake marriage is headline news. Good luck with that." Amara's blood ran cold, but Ryan stepped forward, shielding her. "You're done," he said, voice calm but lethal. "You want to play dirty? I'll bury you." Lila's smile faltered, but she tossed her hair. "We'll see." She turned, heels clicking, leaving a wake of tension. Amara pulled away, heart racing. "She's not bluffing," she said, voice tight. "If this gets out, your company—" "Screw the company," Ryan said, turning to her, eyes fierce. "I meant what I said, Amara. You're what matters." She stared at him, the weight of his words sinking in. The crowd was watching, phones out, but he didn't flinch. He took her hand, leading her through the chaos, out to the street where his car waited, the city's neon glow pulsing around them. They didn't speak, just climbed in, leather seats cool against her skin. The driver pulled away and Ryan turned to her, hand finding hers. "I'm not running," he said, voice low, steady. "Not from you, not from this." She squeezed his hand, throat tight. "Then don't. But this shit's about to get messy." He smiled, small but real. "Let it. I'm all in." They ended up back at the penthouse, city lights sprawling below like a promise. The air was heavy, charged as they stepped inside. Amara dropped her bag, sneakers scuffing the marble. Ryan stood behind her, close but not touching, waiting. She turned, meeting his eyes, the stage lights from Rhythm Haven still dancing in her memory. "You sure about this?" she asked, voice soft but firm. "No contract, no safety net. Just us." He stepped closer, hand cupping her face, thumb tracing her cheek. "I've never been surer of anything." This time, when they kissed, it was slow, deliberate, like they were writing a new poem together. The neon glow filtered through the windows, casting red and gold across their skin. His hand slid to her waist, lifting her onto the counter, the same counter where they'd first crossed the line. But this was different. No lies, no pretense, just them. Her fingers traced his jaw, his neck, memorizing the feel of him. His breath hitched, a soft sound that sent a shiver through her. The city's hum fading to nothing. They didn't rush, didn't need to. His lips found her collarbone, her shoulder, each touch a question, each sigh an answer. The charcoal on her hand smudged his shirt, a mark of her, of them. When they pulled back, breathless, he rested his forehead against hers, voice a whisper. "Stay," he said. "Not because you have to, because you want to." She smiled, heart full, fragile but alive. "I'm here, Ryan. For now, I'm here." They stood there, wrapped in each other, the city breathing below, and for the first time, it felt like enough. The Holy Light Church in Harlem shimmered under the soft pink and gold of a Manhattan dawn, its stained glass windows casting a mosaic of colors across the worn wooden pews. The air was heavy with the scent of wax and old hymnals, laced with the faint sweetness of cornbread wafting from a community breakfast in the basement. Amara Johnson stood by the altar, barefoot, her crimson top loose over jeans, a mug of tea warming her hands, her curls spilled free, catching the light like a halo. It had been 2 weeks since the Harlem Poetry Slam, since Ryan Wilson tore up their contract, since they'd chosen each other over the chaos of his world. The memory of that night, his hands, his voice, the way he'd said, "I want you, for real," still hummed under her skin, a rhythm she couldn't shake. She glanced at the pews, where a few early risers were setting up for the day's gospel service, their laughter echoing softly. This was her Harlem, her anchor, the place that had held her through every storm. Her mom's hospital bills were under control. Darius's foreclosure notice was on hold. But the fight wasn't over. For the first time, though, Amara felt like she could breathe. She sipped her tea, the bitter warmth grounding her, and smiled. She was building something new, not just with Ryan, but for herself. The city stirred outside, horns blaring, a siren slicing through the quiet. Her phone buzzed on the altar. A text from Jada Miles. "Yo, you ready to run Harlem Voices tonight? Your slam's gonna light up Rhythm Haven." Amara grinned, typing back, "Hell yeah, save me a mic." Tonight was the launch of Harlem Voices, a poetry and R&B series she'd created at Rhythm Haven, a space for Harlem's stories to soar. She'd scraped together funds from local sponsors, and Ryan had matched them quietly, no strings attached. It wasn't much, but it was hers, earned, not borrowed from his empire. Ryan's voice broke her thoughts, rough with sleep. "You're up early." She turned, leaning against the altar, wood cool against her back. He stood in the doorway, hair a mess, gray hoodie and jeans a far cry from his usual suits. The dawn light softened his sharp edges, making him look less like a tycoon and more like the man she'd started to see. "Couldn't sleep," she said, setting her mug down. "Too much on my mind." He crossed the room, stopping close enough that she felt his warmth, his bare arms inches from hers. "Good stuff or bad stuff?" he asked, rubbing a hand over his jaw, eyes searching hers. "Both," she said, lips twitching. "Slam tonight. Darius's court date tomorrow. Ma's got a new doc. And you?" She trailed off, meeting his gaze, a smile tugging at her mouth. "You're a whole damn vibe." He laughed, low and warm, the sound wrapping around her like a song. "A good vibe, I hope," he said, voice teasing but soft, fingers brushing her arm. She tilted her head, curls catching the light. "Jury's still out, Wilson." He grinned, leaning in, lips brushing her forehead, a gentle contrast to the fire they'd shared before. "Fair enough," he murmured, breath warm against her skin. Her heart kicked, a familiar ache blooming in her chest. She reached up, fingers tracing his collarbone, slow, deliberate. "You better keep up," she said, voice low, playful but edged with truce. "I don't do half-assed." His eyes darkened, a spark igniting, and before she could blink, he pulled her against him, hands sliding to her waist, lifting her onto the altar's edge. The wood was cool against her thighs, but his touch was fire, fingers slipping under her top, grazing her skin. She gasped, soft and involuntary, as his lips found hers, slow at first, then deeper, hungrier. The dawn light painted them in pink and gold, shadows merging on the stained glass, a dance of light and need. The kiss was a poem, each brush of his lips a line, each sigh of hers a stanza. His hands roamed, one tangling in her curls, the other pressing her lower back, pulling her closer. The church's quiet hum faded, replaced by their breaths, the soft creak of the altar, the faint rustle of her shirt as it slid higher. She hooked her legs around his waist, nails grazing his shoulders, leaving faint marks that felt like a claim. His lips moved to her neck, a soft bite sending a shiver through her, his low groan vibrating against her skin. "Amara," he whispered, her name raw, reverent, like a verse he'd never forget. The pink light caught the sweat on his brow, the intensity in his eyes, and she felt it. The shift from desire to something deeper, something that scared her, as much as it thrilled her. She pulled back, breathless, hands framing his face. "Slow down, poet," she said, voice shaky but smiling. "We got time." He rested his forehead against hers, breath ragged, a smile tugging at his lips. "Yeah," he said, voice rough. "We do." They stayed there, wrapped in the quiet, the city waking around them. Her fingers traced slow circles on his chest, his heartbeat steady under her touch. It wasn't just physical, not anymore. It was a choice, a promise to build something real. The Harlem Voices slam that night was a wildfire, Rhythm Haven bursting with Harlem's heart. Poets, musicians, kids with notebooks, elders with stories. The brick walls vibrated with cheers, red stage lights pulsing like a heartbeat, air thick with coffee and soul. Amara stood by the mic, jacket slung over a chair, crimson top catching the light as she introduced the next poet. Her words were steady, presence commanding, like she'd been born for this. She felt alive, grounded, like she'd finally claimed a piece of herself. Ryan was there, not stealing the spotlight, but in the crowd, hoodie blending with the locals, eyes never leaving her. He'd insisted on coming, not to control, but to witness. And when a young poet dedicated a verse to Harlem's queen, he clapped louder than anyone, a proud glint in his eyes. "You're a damn force," he murmured later, lips close to her ear, music swallowing his words from the crowd. She grinned, nudging him. "Damn right. Don't forget it." Jada swooped in, beer in hand, grin wide. "Look at you running shit. Told you this was your stage." She glanced at Ryan, eyes narrowing playfully. "You behaving, suit?" Ryan raised his hands, smirking. "Trying my best." "Good," Jada said, winking at Amara. "Keep him in check." The night wasn't perfect. Lila Carver had made good on her threat, leaking a story to a tabloid. Billionaire's fake bride. Harlem cashier's con? Ryan's team had spun it as corporate sabotage, but the whispers lingered. When a reporter cornered them, asking about the cashier who conned a tycoon, Ryan cut them off, voice firm. "Amara Johnson's a poet, a leader, and the strongest woman I know." "Write that." Amara's heart swelled, hand squeezing his. A silent thank you. They weren't running from the world anymore. They were facing it together. Later, they walked Harlem's streets, air cool, streetlights casting long shadows. The city's pulse was softer here, a backdrop to the crunch of leaves under their feet, the distant hum of a gospel choir practicing late. Amara wore Ryan's hoodie over her top, fabric warm and heavy, his scent clinging to it. They didn't hold hands, didn't need to, just walked side by side, shoulders brushing, a quiet rhythm. "I used to think love was something you had to earn," Amara said, voice soft, breaking the silence, "like you had to be enough, prove yourself. But now..." She glanced at him, eyes catching the light. "Maybe it's just choosing someone who sees you." Ryan stopped, turning to her, face half lit by a street lamp. "I thought it was a game you played to win," he said, voice low, honest. "But you..." He reached for her hand, fingers lacing with hers. "You make it feel like coming home." Her throat tightened, heart full. She stepped closer, free hand resting on his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath. "Don't get all sappy on me, Wilson," she said, but her voice cracked, betraying her. He smiled, leaning down, lips brushing hers, soft but sure. "Too late," he murmured, kissing her again, deeper. The streets quiet, wrapping around them. The streetlight flickered, casting a warm glow, their shadows blending into one. It wasn't a movie moment, just them, choosing each other in the mess of the world. When they pulled back, she rested her forehead against his, breaths mingling. "We're gonna crash and burn, aren't we?" she said, half joking, half scared. "Maybe," he said, thumb brushing her cheek. "But damn, it's worth a shot." She laughed, bright, free, and for the first time she believed it. They walked on, city breathing around them, a new beginning unfolding with every step. Back at the penthouse, they didn't sleep. They sat on the floor, surrounded by Amara's poems and Ryan's sketches for a Harlem community center tied to Harlem Voices. Their ideas spilled over like whiskey. She mapped out slams. He drew a stage for youth. At one point, he smudged charcoal on her cheek, and she retaliated, laughing, painting his nose with ink. They ended up tangled on the couch, her head on his chest, his fingers tracing lazy circles on her back. Dawn creeping in again. They didn't move in together, not yet. Amara kept her roots in Harlem, her room in her mom's apartment, Her nights at Harlem Corner Store and Rhythm Haven, Ryan still had board meetings, battles with Charles, the weight of his empire, but they made space for each other. Her journal on his desk, his hoodie in her bag, their lives weaving together, verse by verse. One night, weeks later, Amara found a note tucked into her journal. Write the world you want, not the one you survived. She taped it to her mic stand, heart full. They weren't perfect, weren't promised forever, but they were real, and that was enough. Hey, what a journey. Did Amara and Ryan set your heart ablaze? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment to share your vibe.